Out of more than 200 filmmakers that applied, only 5 were chosen to go on an adventure to the wetlands of bangweulu, and I was one of them. Over the next week, we would travel 16 hours by road, navigate through the swamps with a canoe, and meet some of the rarest wildlife in the planet. Our job was to enter the local community and make a film that would leave an impact. But here's the thing, I almost completely made the wrong film. Each of the 5 filmmakers was given a character, but the character was a complete stranger with no prior background, no history, and no idea what their personality would look like. We were challenged to capture their story in only 3 days. I was sitting right next to Kadila, which was one of the staff members of the expedition. He pulled up his leg and showed me a scar, and he told me that he got that scar on one of these expeditions in the river. He was laughing and just enjoying the story and telling me about his scar. And I remember asking myself, what the fuck did I get into? We arrived at the park. We started loading our gears to the makoros, which are these local canoes that the community uses to navigate through the swamps. So what was supposed to be a 10-minute row to camp ended up being 45 minutes for me and Jonathan. I think that us as a pair, we learned a lot in that swamp. We kept getting stuck in the swamp. When we tried to go straight, the makoro kept turning until we figured out that it's all about the balance and where we distribute our weight with the pedal that we do. But yeah, that took us about 45 minutes. So we set up our temporary camp, still an hour away from the main camp, but we needed to rest that night. And before sleeping, I remember going to ask Vossi, one of the senior mentors, if we would be able to capture images of black lechwe on the sunrise right in front of the park. He told me, of course, Eric, this is exactly how wildlife works. You just send them a message and they will be there at the time you want them to be. So that night, while I was tweaking the settings of the Sony FX6 for the shoot in the morning, I sent a telepathic message to the wildlife of this place to give us a warm welcome. Message was received.
So it's 5:41 right now, and we have some black lechwes over there.
Hundreds of black lechwe. You had the male guiding the females, the little black lechwes jumping on top of the water. And that's when I realized I had left my camera on all night, and now I had 0 battery. I sprint over to camp, searching over, I opened the Pelican, found the spare battery that had 70%. I run back to site, put that on the Sony FX6, and thankfully, I was able to capture some of the shots that actually made it to the final film. Always have backup. Now, before we left, the park manager, Maggie, she invited us to take a look at one of the rescued birds of a rare species called shuba. There are only about 200 left in bangweulu, and they're on a mission to rescue the bird from extinction. We had to look through this small piece of glass that looked like a painted glass. And I remember looking to that small mirror, pointing my eyes to the left, not seeing anything, to the right, not seeing anything. And the moment I lock in the middle and the center and I look at the shuba, it felt like its presence was watching me. I've never seen a bird this size look at me with such intensity before. We packed up our things in the makoro, paddled for 1 more hour, and that's where I met Mupanga. The way we were assigned our characters was randomly. You picked a stick, the name that was assigned to that stick would be your story. I got Mupanga. We sat down, I shared my story, he shared his, and I started to try to understand who this person was in front of me. Turns out he worked as a technician for the park where we just came from, and his main job was to keep safe the bird that I just presenced. I asked him, what is the animal he connects with the most in the wetlands? And he said, the shuba. Only 3 days to shoot and the clock is ticking. I decided to get to know Mupanga while paddling through the swamps. We talked for hours in that makoro, but I still felt like the answers I was getting from him were very superficial. Later that day, we stumbled upon the village where he grew up. We approached the community, asked for permission for us to the next day come over and just shoot Mupanga in the environment where he grew up in.
exciting times. We're coming back tomorrow.
Yeah, we're coming back
and
tomorrow.
hopefully we take some proper stuff.
Yeah.
Not
I still had no idea what I was going to shoot there, what was it going to be like. From the answers I was getting, I wasn't very confident about the story I was writing. We sat around with the other filmmakers and the mentors, and when I shared the direction I wanted to go in, one of the mentors told me bluntly and said, "Eric, you're making a film about the shoe bill and not the person." I had been so mesmerized by this bird that I wasn't looking for answers of this person's story. I was looking, okay, how can I make a cool story about that thing that I encountered? The next morning, I walked with Mupanga through the swamp, and I remember asking him, "What do you do for fun besides work?" And he told me, "I like to play football." I was like, "That's great. Do you have a ball?" And he told me, "No, but I can make one." So then he gave me a list of materials that he needed. You know, he needed some straps, some plastic bags, a couple of t-shirts to make a ball. I was like, let's bring this to the community and have some fun with this ball. This was one of the most spontaneous moments of the film that wasn't actually planned. It was just something that happened. And for me, is one of my favorite parts of the film. That's also the reason why when the group picture came, I was the only one that didn't have the Wilderness Project t-shirt. So I was left out. But now we're on the last day of shooting and I still haven't got the full story complete. So I sat down with Mupanga and I asked him, "What was it like the first time you saw a shoe bill?" And he told me he was scared of it. He was terrified of it. He told me the story of his older brother giving him some live bubblefish and challenging him to give the shoe bill while he was at the river. And the shoe bill just attacked him with some speed, going from a place where you feared the shoe bill to now loving it, learning from it and taking care of it. There has to be a transition in your character to be able to do something like that. So I wanted to emphasize that transition on the film. With 2 days left, cameras down, now it's time to edit. The first thing I did before touching a single video was what the mentors from this workshop called the radio edit, which is you don't put any sound, you don't put any visual. The only thing that you do is you put the story on the timeline and make sure it makes sense. So there's 6 elements that the mentors passed on to us to make sure we nailed the sequence. The moment. What is the hook? What is it that wants to make the people watch this film? The who. Who is it about? The where. What's the context of the location? The problem. What is the problem that this character is struggling with? The solution. What's the solution that he's going across to make sure he can overcome this challenge? And then 6, the lasting moment. What do you want people to feel by the end of this film? After that was done, I wanted to feel the sound of it. Minor sounds, so sounds that are a bit more sad, intense, and scary or thriller-like, to show and emphasize that low point of his life and the fear he had for this bird, to then transitioning it to a major, to a happy, to a lovely soundtrack that really emphasized the change of trajectory from his life since he found what he was meant to do. But we only had a couple hours left. The 5 filmmakers spent the whole night on the last day editing. Some of us couldn't concentrate because there were hippo sounds nearby and we were thinking that the hippos would invade the camp. We were Ronald asking, "Eric, the hippos are here." And I was like, "Don't worry, just keep editing." Then the final moment arrived. We screened the films live for the community. When the shoe bill first appeared on the screen, the little kids and the community, when that sound effect came, warm, they were like, they felt the tension that Mupanga had felt the first time he encountered a shoe bill, or at least something similar. Mupanga was the first person to see this, and I remember him taking off the headphones and telling me, "This represents perfectly what we spoke about." And that, for me, the best thing I could have heard from anyone in this expedition. My name is Eric Kajada, and this is just the beginning.
Behind the scenes of behind the scenes, huh?